What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today we have got our Week 7 fantasy quarterback starts and sits for every single matchup, so make sure to tune in, and if you guys enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe. Also, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us, shooting us your questions. We will make sure to answer those throughout the week. And also, check us out online at alldaypigskin.com. Sign up for a free newsletter for exclusive content, all those details in the description. But for now, let's get right into it. Before getting into our breakdowns, I want to give you guys a quick word from our sponsors at Overlay Fantasy Sports, who are taking DFS to a whole nother level. And I specifically want to highlight their matchup shop function, which is an absolute blast. In fact, we've been using it since the start of the NFL season because, let's face it, betting on the same old Team A versus Team B can get a little bit stale, a little bit boring. Well, that's not even close to being the case with the matchup shop of Overlay Fantasy, as it allows you to bet on individual player matchups, and it's super simple. Just pick whichever player you think will have the higher fantasy performance, and just like a regular bet would work, check out the spreads, do your research, and then win some money. You can bet on pretty much any single sport that you want, whether it's NFL, golf, MLB, etc. All those options are there. And again, super simple. Pretty much for any single NFL game coming up, you've got a bunch of different matchups that are always updated and added to. So if it's something as simple as just putting a single submission, you can do that. But guess what? If you want to get a parlay going and double up some of those winnings, you can do that as well. So take advantage of this. All of that homework you're doing for your fantasy lineups, let's have that translate to some big time winnings for your wallet as well. So do yourself a favor and check out Overlay Fantasy's matchup shop now. Our first game of the week on Thursday features the Giants at the Eagles, and in terms of quarterbacks, it's pretty much Carson Wentz. And yes, we realize that Wentz didn't have a hot start to the season, but quietly, the Eagles, even though they haven't translated into victories, have played teams like the Steelers and the Ravens tough, where Philadelphia and Carson Wentz have given a comeback effort late in those games and put together respectable stat lines. And honestly, the biggest reason here that we feel comfortable starting Wentz is because of the matchup itself. The Giants defensively aren't anything to be afraid of. Yes, Wentz will be without Miles Sanders, but we've seen Boston Scott fill in for him before successfully, and the expected return of Deshaun Jackson could also be a boost to this offense. So all in all, we think that Wentz will have the better overall fantasy performance compared to his counterpart here in Daniel Jones. We see Wentz as a mid to high-end quarterback 2 on the week. And speaking of Daniel Jones, look, unfortunately for the Giants, they just haven't been clicking offensively. We know the issues that Daniel Jones has turning the football over. And in terms of scoring points, the Giants haven't exactly excelled in that category either. So the touchdown upside, the passing yardage upside, not really there for Daniel Jones. And if this is another low-scoring affair, I think Daniel Jones likely a sit if you want to be safe. Then Panthers at Saints. We've got both quarterbacks as starts, and we actually have Teddy Bridgewater, for what it's worth, ranked as the higher quarterback in terms of fantasy for Week 7. And primarily this is because this should be a bounce back performance for Bridgewater. Last week we said sit him versus the Bears, and we ended up being correct on that one. But here, everybody from Mike Davis to Bridgewater to Robbie Anderson to DJ Moore should have a bounce back game versus the Saints. Historically speaking, these NFC South games are very high scoring. That's what I expect here. So I like Bridgewater, as a high end, maybe even low end quarterback 1. Then for Drew Brees, you see that we've got him as a start, but we've got an asterisk next to his name, and let us explain. A lot of this will be predicated on if Michael Thomas suits up for this game. If he does, then we feel much better about playing Drew Brees. But at the end of the day, we still have him ranked lower regardless of Michael Thomas playing or not than Bridgewater, because this game script for the Saints will probably be pretty simple. They've arguably got one of the best running backs in the NFL in Alvin Kamara, and a relatively talented backup in Latavius Murray. And we know the Achilles heel for the Panthers is their rush defense, so I expect Kamara and Latavius Murray to get a lot of work. Realistically speaking, Drew Brees probably won't have to do all that much, but either way, this does have high scoring upside, so Brees is worth a start. Next, Bills at the Jets. Really simple here. Josh Allen, yes, he struggled these last 2 weeks, but when you consider the opponents, and especially last week, the weather conditions, not all that much reason to get worried about. And on top of that, when you know in week 7, the Bills have the Jets, Josh Allen is back in top 5 fantasy quarterback territory. I think he's going to have a huge game, whether it's on the ground, whether it's through the air. I love the Bills in this game offensively. Then for the Jets, maybe Sam Darnold returns here. That's still kind of up in the air. It could be Joe Flacco. Either way, I don't like it. I think the Bills defense will feast on the Jets offensively. I expect multiple sacks, multiple turnovers, and again, without Le'Veon Bell, that's another weapon that's missing. Yes, Brashad Perriman will be there, but I still don't think that's enough offensively. I'm sitting whoever starts at quarterback for the Jets. Next up, Browns at the Bengals. Right now, I only feel comfortable starting Joe Burrow. It was positive in terms of seeing A.J. Green finally get involved offensively last week. That'll only help Joe Burrow. Now, the status of Joe Mixon is up in the air, but we've seen Giovanni Bernard be a very quality filler in times before when Mixon hasn't been able to go. So I'm not all that worried about that. In fact, that might even lead to more passing opportunities for Burrow. I see him as a low-end, mid-level quarterback 2 on the week. Then for our sits, you see Baker Mayfield here. And if he was 100% healthy, then we'd probably have him as a start. And he's got the better matchup in terms of facing the Bengals defense. We know that he's got the weapons as well, but last week, he got pulled versus the Steelers, and reports coming out that, maybe it was a smarter move for the Browns to have just sat Baker Mayfield, and maybe they think that they can win this game without Baker, so I think he's going to be limited if he plays, so for that reason, I am sitting him here. Moving on, we've got the Cowboys at Washington, and this might come to a shock to some, but I'll actually start Kyle Allen, and I think he's the better start compared to Andy Dalton. He has the much easier defensive matchup. We saw what Kyler Murray did to the Cowboys last week. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that Kyle Allen is in that same conversation, but to me, he offers high upside quarterback 2 play on the week. I think, I expect a big game from someone like a Terry McLaurin, and even some of those running backs as well. Then for the Cowboys, man, tough to see that from Andy Dalton versus that Arizona defense. We obviously know all the weapons are there, but what we said before, this ceiling offensively for the team without Dak Prescott definitely lower. Now, again, I don't expect Andy Dalton to be as bad as he was versus the Cardinals every single week, but this is a tougher defensive matchup, and I do think Ezekiel Elliott will get more usage, especially after his own down performance last week. So honestly, I am just sitting Andy Dalton here. Afterwards, Packers at the Texans, relatively simple. Start both of these guys. Both quarterbacks have top 10 upside. Yes, Aaron Rodgers was a bust last week, but he should have a big bounce back effort here versus this Texans defense. Doesn't scare us at all. And then Deshaun Watson, man, he had a huge performance last week. And in what we anticipate to be a very high scoring affair versus the Packers, we think it will continue. This offense has been playing much better since the departure of Bill O'Brien, and I expect it to continue here versus the Packers. Both these guys QB1s on the week. Then Lions at the Falcons. Again, I'm firing up both of these quarterbacks. Both have excellent matchups in terms of the defenses. Matthew Stafford versus the Falcons defense, Matt Ryan versus the Lions defense. And I probably have Matt Ryan ranked a little bit higher, and that's primarily because finally we saw Julio Jones healthy. Then pair up Calvin Ridley in there. You've got Hayden Hurst, Todd Gurley. I just like how this Atlanta offense is looking right now. Yes, it might be some short-term success after the departure of Quinn, but it's another favorable matchup. I see both these guys as fringe top 10 quarterbacks, and again, I have Ryan ranked a little bit higher. I think he is, in that low-end quarterback 1 category for the week. Before continuing, I want to tell you guys a little bit about a new partner of ours in Thrive Fantasy, which is an absolutely awesome daily fantasy sports app that specializes in player props. And the great thing about Thrive Fantasy is that it's super simple to use, as they've eliminated the need to do countless hours of research because they only ask you about the top tier athletes in a respective sport. Literally, all you have to do is find a contest and join it. From there, just select the props you like and rack up the most points to win a share of the prize pool. And it's not just the NFL. There's NBA, MLB, PGA. Literally, you think it, Thrive Fantasy has it. In fact, Thrive has awarded over $1.5 million in prizes since launching in 2018 and has $50,000 guaranteed in prizes weekly. So sign up today, and when you use promo code ALLDAY on sign up, you receive an instant match bonus up to $50. You can download Thrive Fantasy on the App Store, Play Store, or by visiting their website, thrivefantasy.com. So stop waiting, sign up today, use promo code ALLDAY, and start propping up today. We've got the Steelers at the Titans, and in terms of starts, we'll start Ben Roethlisberger here. We believe that he has the easier matchup defensively. Let's not forget what Deshaun Watson just did to this Titans defense. And with the emergence of Chase Claypool, the potential return of Deontay Johnson, and hopefully the reemergence of Juju Smith-Schuster, we like the weapons that Ben Roethlisberger has better. He's probably a mid to high-end quarterback 2 on the week. And it might come to a surprise for you, but we have Ryan Tannehill as a sit. And yes, he has been sensational so far this season, but this is a bad matchup, folks. And if he somehow, has a great outing versus the Steelers here, then all credit to him. He deserves afterwards to pretty much, in my eyes, be a week-to-week start candidate almost no matter what. Obviously, guys like A.J. Brown being there, Adam Humphries returning, is huge for this offense. We'll see how much of the game script follows Derrick Henry and just running the football, but I just don't like the ceiling for Ryan Tannehill at this point in time versus the Steelers defense. Moving on, we got the Seahawks at the Cardinals. Again, relatively easy. Fire up both of these quarterbacks. Don't have to think about it too much. Russell Wilson coming off the bye week. I expect him to continue his MVP campaign versus this Cardinals team. I think, in this divisional clash, we could see a lot of points being scored. Kyler Murray versus the Seattle Seahawks secondary. I expect big things from Hopkins and Christian Kirk. And then when you add what Murray can do on the ground with his legs, that even further boosts his floor. So I see both these guys as top 10 quarterbacks on the week. Afterwards, Chiefs at Broncos. Patrick Mahomes obviously is a must start, even though, he still had a relatively good week in week 6. It could have been better, again, similar to what we said about Josh Allen and the weather, that applies to Patrick Mahomes. And when it was raining, just tough conditions. I expect this to be better versus the Denver Broncos. Then Drew Lock, even in that win versus the New England Patriots, the Broncos couldn't get in the end zone. It was pretty much the Brandon McManus show. And I think this will be a tough go at it for Drew Lock versus this Chiefs defense, and for him to keep up offensively with the Chiefs. So I'm fading him here. Then Jaguars at the Chargers. I'll start Justin Herbert. We saw what Matthew Stafford just did to this Jaguars defense. In fact, pretty much what everyone's done to this Jaguars defense all season long. Coming off the bye week, Keenan Allen's supposed to come back as well. Throw in Mike Williams, Hunter Henry. I like Justin Herbert here. But then I'm sitting Gardner Minshew. There's been some inconsistencies. There's some chatter about, well, will the Jaguars potentially sit Gardner Minshew if the wins don't come? And this is a tough matchup versus this Chargers defense, so I am fading Minshew here. Then 49ers at the Patriots. I'll tentatively start both quarterbacks. Jimmy Garoppolo had a nice outing this last week, looking like, him and that injury trending in the right direction, probably over it at this point in time. It's a tough matchup versus the Patriots, but I think we'll see his best foot forward here versus his former team. You throw in George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, and some of those weapons pretty much all healthy offensively, other than the running back situation. I like this for Jimmy Garoppolo. I think he's a decent mid-level quarterback too. Then for Cam Newton and the Patriots, I do think Newton bounces back here. I think there's going to be higher passing success versus the 49ers. We've seen other teams be successful in that category. And again, just like some other rushing quarterbacks, his floor is higher due to what he can do with his legs and the upside for rushing touchdowns. So despite the Patriots offensively lacking weapons, Cam Newton still remains a viable low-end quarterback 1 to continue starting. Then Buccaneers at Raiders. I'll fire up both these quarterbacks. Tom Brady, I'm not afraid of this Raiders defensive matchup. I think we're going to see a good amount of Chris Godwin, Mike Evans opportunities. Now, the only thing that could work against Tom Brady is if Ronald Jones just has another big-time game, and it's a run-first type of game script. That's possible, but I'll take my chances versus Raiders defense to start Tom Brady. But Derek Carr is actually someone I'm more excited about in this matchup because I think there's going to be a lot of passing volume here. The Bucs pretty good on that front, so I'm not sure what to expect from Josh Jacobs. Probably won't be all that much. So that means Derek Carr, Darren Waller, I expect a lot of attention there. Guys like Henry Ruggs, we've seen Ruggs be able to get behind the defense. So I actually like Derek Carr a little bit more than Tom Brady. Both these guys high-end quarterback twos for the week. Then finally, Bears at Rams. Sit both these quarterbacks. Pretty simple. Nick Foles, I want nothing to do with him unless the matchup is absolutely perfect. That is not the case here versus the Rams. I expect Aaron Donald to get after Nick Foles. I expect several ugly turnovers. And most importantly, I expect a low-scoring affair. Yes, I've also got Jared Goff listed as a sit. Obviously, if you're forced to start one of these quarterbacks, Jared Goff would be the preferred option. But this Bears defense is a tough unit. We saw it last week with Teddy Bridgewater. Even with guys like Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, I am fading Jared Goff as well. So with that, we wrap up this Week 7 quarterback start and sit breakdown. And as always, let us hear it in the comment section. Did you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you might have? And in the meantime, if you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe. Also, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us on there as the week progresses. And check us out online at alldaypigskin.com. Sign up for a free newsletter to get access to exclusive content. All those details in the description. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.